Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 7th of July, 2022. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So Sepolia merged successfully. It's so exciting, right? So very happy that it all went through well. I'm going to spend probably, half of today's episode talking about the Sepolia merge and just merge related things in general. But basically, thanks to everyone for watching the stream. If you kind of watched it live or kind of rewatched it, it was a really, really fun stream. A lot more, I guess, organized than the Robston stream because of the fact that we didn't have any issues with hitting TTD because of the fact that the hash power was there. It was right on time basically of when the core devs wanted it to happen, and it happened. And also Sepolia is a permissioned testnet, which means that not anyone can just the beacon chain is a permissioned testnet. So not anyone can jump on. It's whitelisted and things like that. So it was a bit smoother of a transition there as well. But yeah, I mean, the chain finalized. There was initially post-merge a few issues around about 25 to 30% of the network not proposing blocks. And that turned out due to be due to a misconfiguration error as usual with these things. What's funny that for the past few testnets, it's really just been configuration errors. It hasn't been anything merge related. And they were fixed quite quickly, and then we're back up to, well, we're basically back at 95% participation now, 94%. Now, the reason why it's not close to 100%, I mean, one, it's a test net. So, if you're on a test net, even in a permission test net, you have less of incentive, much less of an incentive to keep your nodes online because there's no money on the line, right? It's just test net ETH. Whereas on mainnet, the validator participation is at 99.7%. So there's only 0.3% of validators that are offline. So obviously, a very large chunk there. But essentially, if you look at this now, 94.5%, and the missing validators as well, rather than just the ones that are offline due to this just being a test net. There's also a bunch of keys to validators that were lost, I think. When this was spun up, which means that those validators are basically dead validators at this point, but they'll get kicked out eventually of the validator set there, and then maybe we'll see this creep up to something like 99% as well. So I do want to break down a little bit what happened. There are a couple of threads here, one from Terrence, who's one of the founders of Pri Labs here. So his summary was basically merge. It was a success. 25 to 35% of validators went offline because of this misconfiguration issue. There was no client bug. These hiccups will obviously not delay the merge. And this is what testnets are for, to basically show these edge cases that I guess people don't account for. Now, the issue basically was with the configuration is that I think there was a TTD override and some other things got to do with that. I think I think it's only the TTD override for this particular testnet. There have been other configuration errors, but basically the TTD override happened because this is a testnet. This is probably not something that will be done on mainnet. So when you look at that sort of stuff, look at it from that perspective, this is really just a testnet thing. So it's funny how that works, where we're finding these things on testnet that aren't really going to be an issue on mainnet. We want to find things on testnet that would be an issue on mainnet, but we're not finding any of that because it seems at this point we're literally just going through the motions. The merge transition, I think the core devs and researchers pretty much are happy with where it is today. They know what they're doing. We have it down to a nice exact science at this point. And there's only one more public testnet left, right? There's Girly left, which I think should be scheduled on not the core dev call this Friday, but the core dev call after that. So the one on the 21st of July, that's when they'll schedule the Girly testnet merge, and then it's mainnet, and then we're done, guys. That's how close we are right now. We have one more public testnet left, then we have mainnet. Now, shadow forks will keep happening every week. Parry confirmed that last night on the stream, so that's all going well as well. There doesn't seem to be any issues with those things besides the configuration issues that always seem to pop up here. But as I said, they're not merge related. And what I mean by merge related is that we're looking for something that goes wrong during the merge transition, like a consensus breaking bug or something with the clients breaking because they just weren't talking to each other due to some other merge related thing. But it's just been these configuration things, which is obviously hugely positive. Now, this brings me to one other thing that I wanted to talk about, which is timelines. I did mention in the Daily Gwei Discord yesterday that I've revised my timeline a bit here due to this configuration issue. Now, as I said, it's not merge related. It's not something that is that kind of like is related to the merge transition itself. It's not something that would break the merge, but I think that my read, at least, is that core developers now want to give people even more time to make sure that their configurations are correct and that everything's up to date and that everything's kind of like going to smoothly transition over. Because on mainnet, it's very different to the testnets, and there are things you can't test for on mainnet Ethereum on testnets that exist on mainnet Ethereum. One of those things is all the infrastructure that exists for mainnet Ethereum, all of the exchanges, the services, all the middleware, everything that sits around Ethereum mainnet that just simply doesn't really exist for testnets. And obviously the user side as well, and users actually kind of like interacting with the chain and using the chain and putting transactions on the chain. So there are just some things you can't test for, even with the shadow forks, right? Like it's just the shadow forks don't have that infrastructure that that mainnet has, and the infrastructure needs to be updated. Like if the infrastructure providers are running their own nodes and they don't upgrade those nodes, or they don't have the right configuration set, then they'll get kicked off the network, and they'll need to kind of rectify that. So I expect this to kind of like happen anyway. I don't expect I think even if this kind of like happened on mainnet, where 25 to 30% of the validators went offline or were kind of like offline and then came back online a couple of hours later, the biggest impact that would be felt is because of the fact that there's missed blocks. The user experience would degrade for maybe 2 to 3 hours, where there would be long block times essentially, because there would be like, say, 2-3 missed blocks in a row, which is 36 seconds, and then you'll get confirmed on the fourth block, but then the transactions would build up and everyone would be trying to outbid each other, and it could get like depending on how many blocks are missed, it could get like a bit nasty with MEV and things like that. But generally, people would be much quicker to get their validators back online as well, because of the fact that they're losing ETH, right? It's kind of like a monetary incentive there. Even though they wouldn't get slashed for something like this, they definitely would have like that inactivity leak. And if they're a big staking operation, that can add up very quickly, obviously. So because of that, I think that they're going to want to give people more time for Girly, to prepare for Girly, which I expect to, at this point in time, happen about early mid-August. I think mid-August might be more likely, because if it gets announced on the core dev call on the 21st of July, they may want to give people at least 2 weeks, and probably up to play it on the safe side 3 weeks. So that would bring us to around mid-August. Now, in terms of mainnet, I would imagine that they would love to give people at least a month, right? At least a month, if not 6 weeks. So that would bring us to late September instead of mid-September. It could still happen in mid-September. It just depends how fast Girly gets done. But I think that they just want to give people enough time, maybe an extra couple of weeks than that they otherwise would have given people, to make sure that everyone updates. Because it's better to just kind of run through a transition as smoothly as possible, rather than having to fix things after the fact. But again, it's not a huge deal. Like, I mean, the Beacon chain has been built to be very, very resilient against these sorts of things. The chain was still finalizing. And the reason why it was still finalizing is because more than 66% of the network was still online. More than 2/3 of the network was still online and proposing. And as I mentioned, the biggest issue was that kind of like degrading of block proposals, which is degrading the user experience. So that would obviously not be fun. It would be a few hours of pain. There'd be a lot of FUD as well, because from people who don't understand how the Beacon chain works, they'd be like, oh my god, like 33% of the network went offline, or 30% of the network went offline. Beacon chain is doomed. All this sorts of stuff. When in reality, that's not how it works. And I know that you people that listen to and watch the Refuel know that's not how it works. But yeah, on the timeline front of things, yes, there's only Girly left until mainnet, but I just feel like they want to give people more time. And there's also the execution layer and consensus layer forks, Bellatrix for consensus layer and Paris for execution layer, which will get those two layers ready for the merge. Basically, they're going to happen to very little fanfare. It's basically the same thing as a difficulty bomb delay. Like, it's really nothing to write home about. But once those are in, then we can set, like, obviously the TTD, and then the mainnet merge transition will happen at that TTD, like it has happened for the test nets. Now, leading up to the merge, we are expecting a bit of kind of like miners to fall off. I mean, a fair bit of miners have already fallen off the network due to the fact that the ETH price went down. So you've probably noticed a bit of hash going offline. But I feel like come August, there's the smarter miners, the ones who actually think the merge is happening, are going to probably begin kind of like I don't know, either offloading their GPUs or setting up future sales of their GPUs. Maybe they want to mine, right up until kind of like the merge happens, but definitely would expect to see a hash rate drop there. And this is what TTD was created for, by the way, like for these kind of these things that are going to happen with miners. It was created to kind of prevent any kind of like miner shenanigans, like attacking the network or anything like that. But that's basically, in my mind, very, very, very low chance of happening. I don't think it's really going to happen at all. But I guess like the other thing is the fact that miners start going offline before the actual transition happens, and we want to make sure that the network can run through the transition. And I don't think that's going to be an issue either. I think there are definitely going to be people mining right up until the merge, and because of TTD, it kind of like lessens the blow there as well, even if kind of like miners go offline. And I think as well, miners, some GPU miners are going to get kicked off the network as well, because of the fact that the DAG, which is the basically mechanism within ETH hash, is what kind of like Ethereum uses for mining. I think it's going to kick out 4 or 6 gigabyte cards from the network. So anyone who has a GPU with that much VRAM will be kicked off, and they'll have to mine with kind of like 8 gig, 10 gig, 12 gigabyte cards from there. So there is going to be a drop in hash rate, but don't be alarmed about it. That was expected. That's the reason TTD exists. But yeah, the mainnet merge transition, I'm expecting probably late September at this stage. And look, depending on like how much time the core devs feel like they want to give people and give kind of like all this infrastructure and this ecosystem, kind of like people to update their nodes, it could even push into October. But I would say that's a low chance. Like, I think people just want to get it done, but it's more about kind of like getting it done as safely and as cautiously as possible, and just being kind of like being on the safe side of things, right? Like making sure people have kind of like upgraded in time, making sure they're not left behind. But at the end of the day, the testnet recovered very, very quickly here. Like within 2 to 3 hours, you could imagine mainnet recovering even quicker than that, because of the fact that there's real money on the line. And I would assume that most people are going to make sure that their nodes are up to date and everything's up to date. But I would expect the core devs probably wanting to give at least a month's notice from, I guess, like when they announce the date till the date actually happens, or when they announce TTD to when it actually happens, if not 6 weeks, which, if Girly happens early to mid-August, and then we get a mainnet kind of merge date shortly after that, I would say it would push into kind of like late September there. But we're pretty much there. Like, as I've said before, we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. We're just running through the motions. One more public testnet left. Got the Paris and Bellatrix forks to happen, which again are nothing special. They'll happen with little fanfare, and then the mainnet merge happens. And like, I was kind of like looking at this tweet, actually. This is something that I want to talk about. This tweet from Trent Van Epps here, and he basically kind of like showed all the testing, all kind of like the major testing efforts in order for the merge. So we started with Rayonism, and now I spoke about this a long time ago. I'd actually forgotten about Rayonism. This was born out of a hackathon. I think Proto Lambda and a few other people kind of created this, and this was a way to initially test the merge transition. Then we had Amphora, we had Kintsugi, Kiln, we've had the Girly Shadow Forks 1 to 4, Mainnet Shadow Forks 1 to 8, Merge DevNets 1 to 6, Ropsten, Sepolia, and now we've only got 2 things left, Girly and Mainnet, plus of course the Shadow Forks that are going to be happening every week, but that's kind of like the regular cadence right up until the merge transition happens there. But like, I find this just really, really amazing, because we've tested the merge so much at this point, guys. Like, look how much testing has been done, and not just the same testing, different types of testing, and testing on new testnets, testing on existing testnets, doing shadow forks, which are basically a new thing for the merge transition. We didn't do shadow forks before the merge, before we started testing the merge, which is actually quite wild, because they're really, really cool things to do, and they gave us a lot of insight. But like, there's 2 items left on this list now, Girly and Mainnet. I know I'm kind of like, repeating myself here, but like, for me, for someone who's like spends his whole life in Ethereum and following this so closely for so long now, like when I got into Ethereum in early 2017, proof of stake was one of the main reasons I got into it and was so excited about it, because I was like, oh my God, like if this works, this would be really awesome for this, and this reason. And then I watched it evolve over time. I watched all the trials and tribulations in real time. I've been a part of every single major event that's happened with regards to proof of stake. And we are literally just a few months away from the mainnet merge happening from Ethereum being a full proof of stake network, and we can kind of like move past all of the shitty narratives that surround proof of work. And I've mentioned before how I don't have a strong opinion on proof of work, if it's good or bad. I think that if people want to fight the proof of work fight in kind of like the mainstream, they're more than welcome to. I encourage them to do that, but I'm just very glad that Ethereum won't have to deal with that, because Ethereum has enough things to fight. Like, I mean, come on, guys, like we don't need that one just hanging over us. I'm just glad we're moving to proof of stake for that reason, but also for every other reason that you guys know by now. But yeah, so close. I'll keep you guys updated on the timelines here. But as I said, I think Gurley will be early to mid-August at this point. It's definitely not going to happen in July. Like, I just don't see it. I mean, it's already July 7th. As I said, they're not actually talking about it until July 21st, because the core dev call tomorrow, they'll be talking about the Sepolia merge and lessons learned from that, and all kind of like related stuff to that. And I think Dang Sharding is actually getting spoken about as well. So I expect Gurley to get a date on the 21st of July, which will put it early to mid-August in my eyes. Probably closer to mid-August, and then mainnet probably late September or something like that, which again is still very close. It's July, August, September. Like, it's like 3 months, like 3.5 months or something. It's going to go quicker than we kind of like expect. I'm looking forward to it, obviously, and I can't wait to kind of like see it there. But I think that is it for most of the stuff that I want to talk about with regards to Sepolia. There is the song that Jonathan Mann did, the Song a Day Man, on the Sepolia live stream that we did. He basically uploaded it to Twitter here. It's about 8 minutes and 30 seconds. All the lyrics for the song came from the Daily Gwei Discord channel, which was really, really cool. And he added some music to this as well. So if you want to go listen to this, you can. There's also an NFT you can bid on. I'll link this in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so speaking of proof of stake, we now have 13 million ETH staked in the proof of stake deposit contract. Of course, this is mainnet. This is not the testnet. And this is still worth almost $15 billion. Like, I know the ETH price has come down a lot. It was worth a lot more once upon a time. But the thing is that, we all expect the ETH price to go back up. So as the, more and more ETH gets staked, it can't actually be removed for at least 6 to 12 months after the merge, because withdrawals aren't enabled. So this number could get quite wild. We could actually get to a point where we have $100 billion worth of ETH securing the beacon chain before withdrawals are enabled, if the ETH price goes crazy again. I mean, you can imagine us getting to 20 million ETH staked, and then the ETH price is like 5K. I mean, the ETH price was almost 5K as its last all-time high, and then we would have $100 billion worth of ETH staked. Obviously, like, I got no idea what the price is going to do, but you could imagine a world where that kind of happens, which would be quite cool to see. But just awesome to see that there's still people kind of like staking, still people going into staking. I mean, if I go to the kind of like beacon chain website here, we can actually see, so I've got the Sepolia beacon chain site up there. Now I've got the mainnet up here. You can see, we're at almost 406,000 validators. There's 0 pending validators right now. But there's 13 million ETH staked there. And as I said, like 99.6%, 99.5% participation here, which is obviously what we want to see. And that will kind of like consist after the merge transition as well. Even if there's configuration issues, they'll get fixed, and then we'll just go straight back to this year. So that's basically what mainnet's going to be anyway. And speaking of kind of like, I guess like staked ETH here, there is a great kind of like tweet here from Michael, I believe his name is, where he shows the stETH price has been recovering since mid-June, and the discount to ETH is now less than 3%. So you can see on the chart here what the discount got to. I should have bought some. Like, I saw it get to like 0.93-ish, and I'm like, I should buy some here because there's so many distressed sellers right now. I don't think it's going to go much lower than here, but I didn't. I could have got like, a free bit of ETH there, but I didn't. But that's okay. I still bought ETH. It's not like I'm out of the game. But yeah, and then Michael continues by saying, large selling stopped entirely after Celsius and the stETH liquidations. Interestingly, no large buyers either, just smaller ones bringing up the price incrementally. So it's pretty cool to see that the smaller buyers, that might mean that there's just a lot of enthusiasts, a lot of retail investors who saw this trade and they're like, well, I'm going to take this. Like, yes, okay, it's got some risk attached to it, but it's really relatively low risk. And that you can redeem stETH for 1 ETH once the kind of the withdrawals are enabled on the beacon chain, which should happen, as I said, 6 to 12 months after the merge. And if you're happy waiting, if you're already like a kind of someone who's long ETH, someone who's bullish on ETH for the long term, then this was a great deal. If you kind of like were happy taking on that little bit extra risk, and you're happy kind of like waiting it out until it matures at beacon chain withdrawal there. So cool to see that this is recovering. Of course, obviously some users got hurt from this. especially if they panic sold it thinking that it was going to death spiral like Luna and UST, which is something that a lot of people were saying. They thought, like, because we just had the Terra collapse, everyone was speculating that everything that was quote-unquote pegged to something was going to death spiral. We had people fighting Tether, we had people fighting USDC, we had people going after all the other algo stables, which, to be fair, most of them do go to zero. Well, pretty much all of them go to zero, actually. I shouldn't say most. Pretty much all of them have gone to zero. But as I've explained before, stETH is an rETH and other kind of like liquid staking tokens are completely different. They're collateralized by the ETH in the beacon chain. Like, just because you can't withdraw it now doesn't mean you can't in the future. It's not under collateralized or uncollateralized like some of these or all of the algorithmic stablecoins out there. So just wanted to kind of, I guess, put that out there. And yeah, cool to see this recovering. Hopefully the recovery continues. All right, so I mentioned this AMA that the Ethereum Foundation research team is hosting. It's happening, it's probably already live by the time you're watching this, so definitely go check it out if you haven't yet. I'm sure there'll be answers up there already. I'm looking forward to this. As I said yesterday, these are always great. These are always very, very informative. Pretty much, I think everyone from the Ethereum Foundation research team is going to be there. All the people that you hear me talk about a lot on the Refuel, such as Justin Drake and Dankrat Feist here. Of course, Vitalik's going to be in there. Wow, Dankrat actually has a tweet here listing them all. Danny Ryan, Xiaowei Wang, who's this? ASN, who I actually am not following. That must be a newer Ethereum Foundation researcher. And Ansgar here as well, who I believe is a newer researcher too. But yeah, the who's who of Ethereum kind of Foundation researchers, it's definitely going to be a good AMA. You should definitely go check it out. I'll link it in the YouTube description again here. All right, so this account Dino Eggs on Twitter has put together a nice little image, and he captioned it with "My take on Polygon security spectrum and where each solution lands, from standalone chains to fully secured rollups." Now, the reason why I think this is a really good graphic is because I think people still get confused about Polygon's suite of applications, or suite of products, I should say, and where they all fit in. So you can see on the left-hand side here, and my camera's covering it, but on the far left it says not secured on the horizontal axis here, and it's got not secured by Ethereum. As you can see on the bottom, secured by Ethereum. They've got Polygon Edge with like right at the kind of like not secured side of things, because Polygon Edge doesn't talk to Ethereum at all, besides kind of like, I guess, the bridging, and people can post data there if they're an L2, but it is not secured by Ethereum's validators or miners. Then you've got the Polygon POS chain, which is a bit further on the spectrum. But the Polygon POS chain has its own validator set, but it also checkpoints to Ethereum. So, if you had to, you could reconstruct it from the checkpoint. So it is secured by Ethereum, at least a little bit there. Then you can move further towards the right of the secured by Ethereum horizontal axis here, and you can see Validiums, and falling to that is Volitions as well. And Polygon Avail sits there, which is the data availability layer. Oh, sorry, I got confused between Edge and Avail. Edge is the SDK, I believe. Polygon Avail is the data availability layer. That's where data gets stored on Avail and the proof gets stored on Ethereum. So it's like a half-secured thing. I mean, don't quote me on saying half-secured, because if you're going to go into like really deep semantics into this, it gets funny, and researchers are going to yell at me for saying that. So don't quote me on that. But I still think this paints a good picture and illustrates kind of like how it works. So Polygon Avail, obviously data availability on Polygon Avail, proof for kind of Validiums and Volitions on Ethereum. And then the Volitions that kind of like fall into that can also choose to store their data and their proofs on Ethereum, which is a fully secured chain, fully secured L2 chain, as we know, and they're called rollups. And this is where 4 of Polygon's products fit into: Polygon Hermes, Polygon Maiden, Polygon Nightfall, and Polygon Zero. So that's the spectrum for you guys to kind of like look at. And I think the reason why this is so great is because you can quickly use this to show people, hey, Polygon does have layer 2 products, but it's not technically the POS chain. It's actually these things on the right hand side, and then you can educate them about data availability and data and proofs and things like that. But it's really cool to see that actually most of Polygon's products fall on the fully secured by Ethereum side. Now, obviously, none of them are live in any real capacity yet. I think Hermes is live on kind of like mainnet. Same with Nightfall, but they're not obviously they're not used nearly as much as the Polygon POS chain is. But the plan is obviously in the future for them to be used as much as the POS chain, if not more, especially as we add more data availability to Ethereum layer 1, so that they can have cheaper transactions to be secured by Ethereum there. So yeah, just wanted to kind of highlight this because I thought it was a really, really cool graphic. So speaking of Polygon's Stark solutions here, or layer 2 solutions here, Brendan, who is working on Polygon Zero, put together a great tweet thread where he starts off by saying, the recursive Starks pioneered by Polygon let us parallelize proof generation and reduce latency. But what's really cool is that they allow us to exploit a space-time trade-off. This lets us do crazy things like proving 100 kekak hashes per second on a laptop. Now, this is getting a little bit into the weeds, or a lot into the weeds of the cryptography side of kind of rollups here and of things like Starks. It's a short thread if you want to kind of read it, but I think from my read, what he is saying here is that parallelizing kind of like that proof generation and reducing latency allows us to basically do this proof generation on a laptop, on a lower powered device, which is what we want to work towards. Because as I mentioned yesterday, or I think the day before, there's going to be ASICs for that prove these sorts of things. So, that prove Starks and Snarks and all these ZK related cryptography here. And if we can get like really, really efficient ASICs, we can be proving a shit ton of these things and kind of like get ZK rollups to be extremely cheap on the proving side of things, and essentially get them to the point where we can scale like up to, I don't know, hundreds of thousands, millions of transactions per second. That's where the craziness kicks in. And I've talked about this before, how I think that we're going to get there. It's going to take a little while, probably a longer while than we would like, just because this stuff is bleeding edge. It's using new cryptography. Obviously, whenever you do that, you want to be very careful with it. But we're there. The path is there. We know where we want to get to. And there's so many teams working on this. Obviously, not just Polygon. There's so many teams working on Stark, Snark, ZK rollups, all these sorts of stuff. Obviously, Starkware, it's in their name, right? And then you have like Scroll, and you have ZK Sync, and you have a bunch of others out there. I'm sure Arbitrum and Optimism are also looking into this sorts of stuff too. So yeah, just really, really cool to see that we're already getting to a point where this kind of stuff goes beyond theory and starts kind of like going into practice, which is definitely what we want to see, because that's what users care about at the end of the day, right? All right, so I just wanted to quickly shout out again the Daily Gwei TV account here. So this Twitter account is maintained by ZK Ben, who a lot of you may have seen if you're in the Discord channel. He's quite active in there. But for those of you who don't know, the Daily Gwei _TV account on Twitter basically shares short clips from the refuel, about 30-second clips, and also extra information from kind of like the refuel as well. So kind of like links and things like that. So definitely go follow this Twitter account. Maybe you kind of like missed the refuel. Maybe you want to share one of the kind of like things that I'm talking about on the refuel to your friends in a short bite-sized clip. Well, this is what you can do with these kind of like Daily Gwei TV clips here. And this has been going for, I think, since June now. So a couple, I guess like 6 weeks almost now, 5 or 6 weeks. And ZK Ben has been doing an amazing job. So obviously very big shout out to him there. But yeah, this was just put together by him. I didn't even ask him to do this or anything. I didn't ask anyone to do this. He just went, hey, I want to do this. He asked me. And I'm like, yeah, sure, man. Like, go ahead. This would be awesome. So if you're not following that account, it's linked in the YouTube description for you to go follow it. Please do. Even if you're not even interested in the clips, you just want to support the account. Obviously, if you watch the refuel every day, you probably don't need to watch the clips. But even if you just want to support the account, you can follow it, get that follow account up, so more people find it, more people find the Daily Gwei ecosystem, and we can grow as a community as well there. But I think on that note, that's going to be it for today. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks everyone.